So, I know that I did Blue Ridge in my last one. I'm going to come in and do tips and tricks for more coastal region and let's say Piedmont region and Ridge and Valley because, yeah, granted, a lot of the things I did for the last one were good for the mountainous regions, but not so good for the flat regions. I did have my Sable Palm in my last video, and I am going to go in and finish cutting out all these little bits and pieces so I have more of a truffula tree part. But I'm also going to be making a live oak tree for this as well. Now, if you wanted to do, let's say, this kind of palm, but you want it to be a saw palmetto, those palmettos that are really close to the ground, I'm going to show you how to do those too. Fun fact, Sable Palm or cabbage palm is the state tree of South Carolina, but it is not a tree. Palms are not actual trees, they are giant fancy grasses. All palms are giant fancy grasses. Don't have real bark. They grow like tall grass, one leaf outside of another. Alright, so I got my Sable Palm. In this, I can come back in and give it detail with some zigzag lines of where the other leaves may be. So now I got a Sable Palm. And it's got the base of the air dry clay too. On the back, yeah, you can tell it's not a palm, but still. Alright, so I got my Sable Palm. Now I'm going to do a live oak tree. And I said earlier, you can take a cotton ball and use your watercolors, a little bit of black and a lot of water to make gray. And you can pull them apart and make these gray cottons. So I've drawn the canopy of my live oak tree. The angel oak is a perfect example of what a live oak tree is. It's one of the largest, widest oaks in our country, and also one of the oldest. You're not allowed to touch it. You're allowed to take pictures of it, but you cannot touch it. You cannot damage the tree in any way because we want to live as long as possible. I'm going to cut out, and all I did to give this a little bit, I'm going to save my green for my saw palmettos, is I just went in and did scrumbling at the bottom to help give a little bit more of kind of shade at the bottom. I'm going to go back in, honey nut oats, okay, turn it over to have that cardboard. Let's see, I think I'll use this side to do my trunk. Get some texture. It could just be scrumbling lines. Now the thing about these trees is their trunks aren't very tall, and usually they do branch out. So if you want to be a little more accurate to real life, you can actually have a branch come off and spread out just like that. But you got to cut out the whole thing. So I'm going to come in. And these are pretty easy to cut, I will say. Bigger scissors do make it a little easier. so now I've got the trunk of my tree. I've got the crown of my live oak tree. Now I'm going to put it there. It's actually too tall for me, so I'm actually going to cut off the bottom of it. And I am simply going to glue it to itself. Boop. And yeah, there's a little bit of glue sticking out. I'm not going to worry about that. Alright, now I'm going to come back in with my gray painted cotton balls, and I'm going to actually spread them out and make them somewhat fluffy. So it looks like they can hang. Not too much. But I am going to look at my tree, put a dot of glue, and I am going to put in my Spanish moss in my tree. Remember, cotton ball, I painted it with gray watercolor paint. It could be black paint with a lot of water mixed into it. That's how you make gray watercolor paint. Now, Spanish moss doesn't hurt the tree. It simply likes to grow on it because it needs moisture from the air, so humid air, and just a place to hang out. It is not a parasite. And you see, I don't need a lot of glue. I'm not a goofus. I'm not going to use a terrible amount of glue. And of course it hangs from the branches too. Perfect. Alright, so now I got some Spanish moss up in my tree. I'm going to get back into my air dry clay because I don't actually want to make a cross section base for this one. I'm just going to be lazy. I'm so lazy. Get in the clay, roll into the ball, push the ball out onto the surface of a counter or a table or desk. Take your tree, make a base for it. Gorgeous. Alright, tree's gonna stand up now. Just like that. Boop. Stands up on its own. Alright, so now I got a Sable Palm and a live oak, and now I'm going to make some saw palmettos. You can find saw palmettos kind of in the Piedmont area. They're hard to find though. It's easier to find, let's say, canebrake here in the Piedmont area. Canebrake looks like a bunch of little bamboo marshland. Alright, so I'm actually going to go whoa, and make this interesting looking palm leaf. And I'm going to give it a pretty thick base. So let's make it pretty long. And I'm going to take more, okay, and make kind of a bush out of it. Pretty thick at the bottom. Just need green paper for this. Notice that there are veins running from the base of the leaf to the end of each tip of the palm leaf. And these are called saw palmettos because the stems are actually covered with saw-like teeth that will tear you apart if you try and walk through it. These are not nice bushes or nice palms at all. Early explorers saw that and named them saw palmettos because of all the little saw teeth on the stems. La 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 la. Yes, you're gonna have a lot of spiky things if you do coastal. So now I got my solid palmetto. Again, gonna be lazy. I can come back and paint these brown or green or whatever color I need. Boop, boop, boop. Boop, boop, boop. Boop, boop. Make a little base, something that can be glued down easier than, say, paper. Boop. Solid palmetto. Alright, so now I got a lot of stuff. Well, Miss Wilson, if I'm going to do a background in the very back of my box of the beautiful beachscape that we learned how to draw in your landscape video, how am I going to make dunes? It's literally a piece of paper that I crumpled up, made it flat on one side, and now it kind of has a hump to it. So now I'm going to go back in either with yellow Play-Doh or with air dry clay. I'm going to roll it into a ball, but it's going to be a relatively big ball. I'm going to flatten it out. Flip it over, flatten it out again. Flip it over, flatten it out again. Flip it over. I'm trying to kind of make a pizza thing going on. But no crust. I want it pretty even all the way around. I'm going to check and peel it off. Nope, not quite big enough. Gently peel it off. Don't make it too thin that it rips and all that. And I'm actually going to layer it over my piece of paper. And it may have an ugly side. I'm going to put that toward the back. There may be some damage, so I may need to make some patches. And that's fine. But now I have a interesting flat hill that I can paint to be a sand dune. I'll rip this in half actually. And y'all can kind of work with it just a little bit. Very gently, come here you. Sometimes clay is fantastic, it really is, and sometimes it has a mind of its own. Sometimes you got to come back in and make it play nice, aka bend it to your will. And I'm going to close up my air dry clay so it doesn't dry out. Okay, so I got a interesting little kind of pizza hill, and I can come back in with like raffia grass or blades of grass that you found outside, and I can make plants to stick into this. Got my handy dandy pencil, and I am simply going to stick them in. And since this piece is quite delicate, I'm actually going to let it air dry outside of my thing. But now I can have some sea oats, that protected species I told you all about. And they're just gonna chill. Alright, and now I got a dune that I can come back and color later. And yeah, it has an ugly side, so I'm going to make sure that that side isn't facing toward my people. Okay, so got some dunes. Again, if you have Piedmont area, I said anything that is the understory has a lot of bushes, and we learned how to make bushes out of pom-poms. We learned how to take a bit of clay and make grass that can stand up, so you can put a bunch of that in Piedmont. If you do Piedmont, air dry clay does leave residue. We'll tell you that. Just take a Clorox wipe and wipe it off. Now, Mrs. Wisnant, I don't know. How do I make, I don't know, an armadillo? So, a skunk, an armadillo, a woodchuck, all those animals, again, can be blob animals like our raccoon and fox, but this time, instead of standing up, they're going to be down on the ground. So I'm going to start with a body. I'm going to kind of make it a log shape, because I'm going for armadillo. I'm going to take a smaller chunk of air dry clay, and again, I've saved my scraps, so stick on one end, and then for the tail, I'll have it stuck on the other. So head on one side, and armadillos have, I'll zoom in on this and focus. Going to make a nice long thin tail, because they don't have big bushy tails, they have long thin tails. I'm going to take it and connect it, and I may come back and make little ears for my armadillo, but there is a basic body for an armadillo. So armadillo, a little larger. Going to make a snout. That's a bit of a big head for such a small animal. I'm going to pinch off some. Yeah, that's a bit better. I'm going to, not as tippy as, let's say, the fox. I'm actually going to rip off some, because I want a flatter tail. It comes a little bit to kind of like a blunt point. Okay, I'm going to put it on. And I came back in, I painted this whole thing black, and I put white stripes down it. Immediately, American skunk. So armadillo, skunk. Well, Mrs. Wisnant, you did a snake in the last one. What if I wanted to do, let's see, a sea turtle? Oh, so terrible hard. Start with a ball. And you can do this down on the tabletop. I'm going to flatten it out into a shell. And I'm going to take my toothpicks. Break off 5. 1, 2, 3. I'm going to bend them down just a little bit. 4, 5. So a head and big paddle-like legs. Let me just do a few more. And then you have a sea turtle. Or you can change them into chunkier legs and put them underneath and it will be a tortoise. So like a gopher tortoise. Who said you need to do legs for the other ones? You just need to give people an idea of what lives in your region. That one is definitely not big enough. There you go. That's better. Yeah, don't stick to the table. Come on, you. Come on. Come on. There we go. Oh, that's why. Yeah, sometimes they need a little patching up on the bottom, but on top they look great. Alright, so sea turtle. Mrs. Wissant, I really like the pileated woodpecker that you had in there. How do I do a pileated woodpecker, Mrs. Wissant? Alright, let's do pileated woodpecker then. Put my animals to the side. Boop. Boop. So pileateds are found pretty much through all regions, though they prefer the mountainous regions. And they have a kind of laugh that they have. They call out. So this is going to be an animal I stick on the side of a tree. And I am going to have the bird itself, okay, but I'm going to add a tab on the side of it. Let me close up my air dry clay. Always close up your air dry clay. Or Play-Doh or whatever you're working with for your clay. I'm going to cut out my bud. Okay. Okay, bird. Piece of tape or spot of glue, either or. I'm going to take this, hide it behind my tree, the tab, and now I got a woodpecker on my tree. Same thing with other kind of birds. You can draw them, cut them out, and then place them in your tree. That's how you do birds. If you have something that's a little too small, like again a newt or a salamander or a lizard, you can make them on paper and then cut them out. Alright, I hope that answers some more of your tips and tricks to make a few other props for a few of the other different regions that we have. Alright, until next time.